hearing and chanting. I had a thought the other, when we were talking about Dashashvamedha Ghat, what if we did a 1 year, or maybe start with 6 months or 3, and we go to like 3 different dhams. You do a month in one dham, then you go to the next one. Chaturmasya, and we'll end up here for the... Which ones would you pick? Ekachakra. We could go to Ekachakra for a month. And hear and chant there. And go to Mayapur. Do it in Purushottam and Puri. Definitely some air conditioning there. Free gift. Okay. We're starting up again, minus all the dreams of the future. We're here right now. Madhya 19:151. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's one of the most famous verses in all of our books. Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. According to their karma, all living entities are wandering throughout the entire universe. Some of them are being elevated to the upper planetary systems, and some are going down into the lower planetary systems. Out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. Purport: when we speak of Brahmanda, we refer to the whole universe, or to the cluster of many millions of universes. In all the universes there are innumerable planets, and there are innumerable living entities upon those planets, in the air, on land, and in the water. There are millions and trillions of living entities everywhere, and they are engaged by Maya in suffering and enjoying the results of their fruitive activity, life after life. This is the position of the materially conditioned living entities. Out of many of these living entities, one who is actually fortunate, Bhagyavan, comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by Krishna's mercy. Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, and if one desires something, Krishna fulfills one's desire. If the living entity by chance or fortune comes in contact with the Krishna consciousness movement and wishes to associate with that movement, Krishna, who is situated in everyone's heart, gives him the chance to meet a bona fide spiritual master. This is called Guru Krishna Prasad. Krishna is prepared to bestow his mercy upon all living entities, and as soon as a living entity desires the Lord's mercy, the Lord immediately gives him an opportunity to meet a bona fide spiritual master. Such a fortunate person is fortified by both Krishna and the spiritual master. He is helped from within by Krishna and from without by the spiritual master. Both are prepared to help the sincere living being become free from material bondage. How one can become this fortunate can be seen in the life of Srila Narada Muni. In his previous life, he was born of a maidservant. Although he was not born into a prestigious position, his mother was fortunately engaged in rendering service to some Vaishnavas. When these Vaishnavas were resting during the Chaturmasya period, the boy Narada took the opportunity to engage in their service. Taking compassion upon the boy, the Vaishnavas offered him the remnants of their food. By serving these Vaishnavas and obeying their orders, the boy became the object of their sympathy, and by the Vaishnavas' unknown mercy, he gradually became a pure devotee. In the next life, he was Narada Muni, the most exalted of Vaishnavas, and the most important guru and acharya of Vaishnavas. Following in the footsteps of Narada Muni, this Krishna consciousness movement is rendering service to humanity by giving everyone a chance to come in contact with Krishna. If one is fortunate, he becomes intimately related with this movement. Then by the grace of Krishna, one's life becomes successful. Everyone has dormant Krishna bhakti, love for Krishna, and in the association of good devotees, that love is revealed. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22.107, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kara Eutoi. Dormant devotional service to Krishna is within everyone. Simply by associating with devotees, hearing their good instructions, and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one awakens his dormant love for Krishna. In this way, one acquires the seed of devotional service. Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. When a person receives the seed of devotional service, he should take care of it by becoming a gardener and sowing the seed in his heart. If he waters the seed gradually by the process of Shravan and Kirtan, hearing and chanting, the seed will begin to sprout. Mali hai kare she bija arupan, Shravana Kirtana jali kare sechan. Mali hai, becoming a gardener. Kare does, she, that, bija. Seed of devotional service. Aropana, sowing. Shravana, of hearing. Kirtan, of chanting. Jale, with the water. Kare does, sechan, sprinkling. To live with devotees or to live in a temple means to associate with the Shravana Kirtana process. Sometimes neophyte devotees think that they can continue the Shravana Kirtana process without worshipping the deity, but the execution of such Shravana Kirtana is meant for highly developed devotees like Haridas Thakur, who engaged in the Shravana Kirtana process without worshipping the deity. However, one should not falsely imitate Haridas Thakur and abandon deity worship just to try to engage in Shravanam Kirtanam. This is not possible for neophyte devotees, which is a continuation of the conversation in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu earlier said that the holy name doesn't wait for initiation, and then the purport in which Prabhupada quotes from Jiva Goswami and other acharyas says, no, you have to be initiated. Because generally people, unless they have the Panchratrik Vidhi, then they can't maintain enough purity to continue chanting Hare Krishna. The word Guru Prasad indicates that the spiritual master is very merciful in bestowing the boon of devotional service upon the disciple. That is the best possible gift the spiritual master has to offer. Those with a background of pious life are eligible to receive life's supreme benefit. And to bestow this benefit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead sends his representative to impart his mercy. Endowed with the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master distributes the mercy to those who are elevated and pious. Thus, the spiritual master trains his disciples to render devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Guru Kripa. It is Guru Prasad. It is Krishna Prasad, Krishna's mercy, that he sends a bona fide spiritual master to the deserving disciple. By the mercy of Krishna, one meets the bona fide spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, the disciple is fully trained in the devotional service of the Lord. Bhakti Lata Bij means the seed of devotional service. Everything has an original cause or seed. For any idea, program, plan, or device, there is first of all the contemplation of the plan, and that is called Bij, or the seed. The methods, rules, and regulations by which one is perfectly trained in devotional service constitute the Bhakti Lata Bij, or seed of devotional service. This Bhakti Lata Bij is received from the spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. Other seeds called Anyabhilashita Bij include Karma Bij and Jnana Bij. If one is not fortunate enough to receive the Bhakti Lata Bij from the spiritual master, he instead cultivates such seeds as Karma Bij, Jnana Bij, or political, social, or philosophical Bijas. Philanthropic. Is that what it says? Okay, sorry. If one is not fortunate enough to receive the Bhakti Lata Bij from the spiritual master, he instead cultivates such seeds as Karma Bij, Jnana Bij, or political, social, or philanthropic Bijas. However, the Bhakti Lata Bij is different from these other Bijas. The Bhakti Lata Bij can be received only through the mercy of the spiritual master. Therefore, one has to satisfy the spiritual master to get the Bhakti Lata Bij. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasada. The Bhakti Lata Bij is the origin of devotional service. Unless one satisfies the spiritual master, he gets the Bij, or root cause, of karma, jnana, and yoga, without the benefit of devotional service. But one who is faithful to his spiritual master gets the Bhakti Lata Bij. This Bhakti Lata Bij is received when one is initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. After receiving the spiritual master's mercy, one must repeat his instructions, and this is called Shravana Kirtana, hearing and chanting. One who has not properly heard from the spiritual master, or who does not follow the regulative principles, is not fit for chanting. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 2:41. Vyavasaya mika buddhire keha kurunandana. One who has not listened carefully to the instructions of the spiritual master is unfit for chanting or for preaching the cult of devotional service. One has to water the Bhakti Lata Bij after receiving instructions from the spiritual master. As one waters the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed sprouts and the creeper gradually grows to the point where it penetrates the walls of this universe and goes beyond the Viraja river, lying between the spiritual world and the material world. It attains Brahmalok, the Brahman effulgence, and penetrating through that stratum, it reaches the spiritual sky and the spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan. Purport: a creeper generally takes shelter of a big tree, but the Bhakti Lata, being the creeper of spiritual energy, cannot take shelter of any material planet. For there is no tree on any material planet that the Bhakti Lata creeper can utilize for shelter. In other words, devotional service cannot be utilized for any material purpose. Devotional service is meant only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes men with a poor fund of knowledge maintain that bhakti can be applied to material things. Also, in other words, they say that devotional service can be rendered to one's country or to the demigods. But this is not a fact. Devotional service is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it is beyond this material range. There is a river or causal ocean between the spiritual and material natures, and this river is free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Therefore it is called Viraja. The prefix V means Vigata, completely eradicated, and Rajas means the influence of the material world. On this platform, a living entity is completely free from material entanglement. For the Gyanis who want to merge into the Brahman effulgence, there's Brahmalok. The Bhakti Lata, however, has no shelter in the material world, nor has it shelter in Brahmalok, although Brahmalok is beyond the material world. The Bhakti Lata grows until it reaches the spiritual sky, where Goloka Vrindavan is situated. Being situated in one's heart and being watered by Shravana Kirtana, the Bhakti Lata, the Bhakti creeper, grows more and more. In this way it attains the shelter of the desire tree of the lotus feet of Krishna, who is eternally situated in the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, in the topmost region of the spiritual world. In the Brahma Samhita 537 it is said, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitavis Tavirya eva Najarupa Taya Kalabhi Goloka eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamahamuja. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord. He resides in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure, and who embodies the ecstatic potency, Hladini. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form, and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. In the spiritual world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has expanded himself by his spiritual potency. He has his eternal form of bliss and knowledge, Satchidananda Vigraha. Everything in the Goloka Vrindavan planet is a spiritual expansion of Satchit Ananda. Everyone there is of the same potency, Ananda Chinmaya Ras. The relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his servitor is Chinmaya Ras. Krishna and his entourage and paraphernalia are of the same Chinmaya potency. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is expanded throughout the spiritual world. And when that Chinmaya Ras potency expands through the material potency, it becomes all-pervading. The idea is that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead exists on his own planet, Goloka Vrindavan, he is also present everywhere. Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. He is present within all the universes, although they are innumerable, and he is also present within the atom. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriday sharadana tishtati. He is also present within the heart of all living entities. This is his all-pervasive potency. Goloka Vrindavan is the highest planet in the spiritual world. In order to go to the spiritual world after penetrating the covering of the material universe, one must penetrate Brahmalok, the spiritual effulgence. Then one can come to the Goloka Vrindavan planet. There are also other planets in the spiritual world called Vaikuntha planets, and on these planets, Lord Narayan is worshipped with awe and veneration. On these planets, Shantaras is prevalent, and on some of the devotees are also connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Dasyaras, the mellow of servitorship. As far as the mellow of fraternity is concerned, in Vaikuntha this rasa is represented by Gaurava Sakya, friendship in awe and veneration. The other fraternity rasa, exhibited as Vishramba, friendship in equality, is found in the Goloka Vrindavan planet. Above that is service to the Lord in Vatsalya Ras, parental love, and above all is the relationship with the Lord in the Madhurya Ras, conjugal love. These 5 rasas are fully exhibited in the spiritual world in one's relationship with the Lord. Therefore, in the spiritual world, the Bhakti Lata creeper finds its resting place at the lotus feet of Krishna. Tahan vistarita hai pale prema pal, ihan male sheche nitya shavanari jal. The creeper the creeper greatly expands in the Goloka Vrindavan planet, and there it produces the fruit of love of Krishna, love for Krishna. Although remaining in the material world, the gardener regularly sprinkles the creeper with the water of hearing and chanting. Purport: in Goloka Vrindavan, the devotees have very intimate relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee engages in the Lord's service in great ecstatic love. Such love was exhibited personally by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his teachings to the people of the material world. The fruit of the devotional creeper is the pure desire to serve and please the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishnendriya Priti Ichad Hari Prem Nam. In the spiritual world, one has no desire other than to please the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conditioned soul within the material world can neither understand nor appreciate how a pure devotee in the material world can render confidential service to the Lord out of feelings of ecstatic love and always engage in pleasing the Supreme Lord's senses. Although seen within this material world, the pure devotee always engages in the confidential service of the Lord. An ordinary neophyte devotee cannot realize this. Therefore it is said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigneha Na Vijay. The activities of a pure Vaishnav cannot be understood even by a learned scholar in the material world. Every living entity is wandering within this universe in different species and on different planetary systems according to his fruitive activities. Out of many millions of living entities, one may be fortunate enough to receive the seed of the Bhakti Lata, the creeper of devotional service. By the grace of the spiritual master and Krishna, one nourishes the Bhakti Lata by regularly sprinkling it with the water of Shravana Kirtana, hearing and chanting. In this way, the seed of the Bhakti Lata sprouts and grows up and up through the whole universe until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and reaches the spiritual world. The Bhakti Lata continues to grow until it reaches the topmost planetary system, Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna lives. There the creeper takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, and that is its final destination. At that time, the creeper begins to grow the fruits of ecstatic love of God. It is the duty of the devotee who nourishes the creeper to be very careful. It is said that the watering of the creeper must continue. Ihan mali sheche nitya shravanadi jal. It is not that at a certain stage one can stop chanting and hearing and become a mature devotee. If one stops, one certainly falls down from devotional service. Although one may be very much exalted in devotional service, he should not give up the watering process of Shravanam Kirtanam. If one gives up that process, it is due to an offense. This is described in the following verse. Are you ready to hear the next verse?
Yes.
Okay. Jadi Vaishnava Parada Ute Hati Mata Upadeva Chinde Tar Shuki Jaya Pata. If the devotee commits an offense at the feet of a Vaishnav while cultivating the creeper of devotional service in the mature world, his offense is compared to a mad elephant that uproots the creeper and breaks it. In this way, the leaves of the creeper are dried up. One's devotional attitude increases in the association of a Vaishnav. Tandera charana sevi bhakta shanivas janame janame hoy e abhilash. By his personal example, Narottam Das Thakur stresses that a devotee must always remember to please his predecessor Acharya. The Goswamis are represented by one's spiritual master. One cannot be an Acharya, spiritual master, without following strictly in the disciplic succession of the Acharyas. One who is actually serious about advancing in devotional service should desire only to satisfy the previous Acharyas. Echai Gosai Jar Muitar Das. One should always think of oneself as a servant of the Acharyas. And thinking this, one should live in this society of Vaishnavas. However, if one thinks that he has become very mature and can live separate from the association of Vaishnavas, and thus gives up all the regulator principles due to offending a Vaishnav, one's position becomes very dangerous. Offenses against the holy name are explained in the Adi Leela, chapter 8, verse 24. Giving up the regulative principles and living according to one's whims is compared to a mad elephant, which by force uproots the Bhakti Lata and breaks it to pieces. In this way, the Bhakti Lata shrivels up. Such an offense is especially created when one disobeys the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called Guru Avajna. The devotee must therefore be very careful not to commit offenses against the spiritual master by disobeying his instructions. As soon as one is deviated from the instructions of the spiritual master, the uprooting of the Bhakti Lata begins, and gradually the leaves dry up. Just a few reflections or questions? 3, 2, 1. Yes, Devavrata, Prabhu. Achinta Chaitanya is here. Good.
I appreciate how clinical this analysis of Vaishnava Aparad is. It's not sentimental in any way. There's a development of a devotional attitude which one can practically observe from themselves, and an independent or whimsical mentality is a result of Vaishnava Aparad, and that's practical because one can practically look within and then also look around them to see what's their health in the process of Krishna consciousness. So I appreciate that it's not just some emotional or sentimental thing, but there's a practical way to evaluate one's progress.
You become a practicing aparadi. Because you know you're either doing it or you're not, right?
But I have a question. I've seen I've seen that, unfortunately, that many people who have committed Vaishnava aparad, they have it fixed in their mind for some time that they're doing the right thing. They may even think that they're acting under the guidance of their spiritual master, but you can practically see from their activity they're distancing themselves from the association of devotees. They're saying this, they're saying that, but they still think they're practicing. So how can one kind of bring them to reality? Because there's this like interim period I've seen of completely ostracizing oneself from the association of devotees and then being in the association of devotees, and there's a gray area which one transitions through where they're still in contact with the devotees and the devotees can potentially help them. But yeah, I'm just curious to know how to help people work through this whimsical disposition which arises.
Well, there is a psychological phenomenon that starts with dependence, and then there's a need for independence. We see it in children sometimes when they're raised in Krishna conscious families, but it happens with those who enthusiastically come to Krishna consciousness and after some time feeling their oats and also have a sense of being established within the community. Then there may be a desire for independence. And after some time, one comes to the most favorable of circumstances for practicing devotional service, which is interdependence. And to answer the question, at least from my observation, when somebody's hankering for independence, they go through that phase, it's best to keep close to them, give them unconditional love, and keep the connection as much as possible. Because mostly what I've seen, although it's anecdotal, is that people who are given unconditional love and that we keep in touch with, who are going through that period of wanting independence, they come back again and search for interdependence. And I've seen it in spectacular ways. People who spectacularly disobeyed the orders of the spiritual master, and then who become rectified and spectacularly remorseful afterwards. That happens. Maya is so strong too. If people get bad association, they become sentimental, and they can develop all kinds of anarthas, some of which are, devotional service antiquated, and there are other more modern ways, although they're the same old thing, rehashed. It's all been done and more in previous millenniums. People trying to find ways to explore their spirituality, aside from following the four regulative principles and chanting Hare Krishna. But then after becoming the subject of Maya's, being beaten by Maya severely, people often come back and realize that they had something very valuable. It's not a great idea, however, that is going away for such a long period of time, because one can really lose one's momentum and the opportunity of putting together at least one full lifetime from pillar to post, where one takes advantage of the process, which is the best idea. Is there anything else from the outside People's Party? Yes, we have Namich and Tamini.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So my question is, how do we, when someone's going through this phase of independence, going through a difficult phase, how do we balance giving them unconditional love, but also protecting ourselves from getting influenced by their ideas and their association?
will, by being very strict oneself, if you have really strong sadhana and great association, and you're hearing and chanting, then you'll naturally feel unattracted to the activities of such people, and it gives you the perspective of detachment through which you can give them the best kind of association. And it doesn't mean also that you have to move in with them to try to save them either. But what I mean by unconditional just means that you don't reject them based on their deviations. It doesn't mean that you agree with it and say, yeah, it's a great idea, but it just means that you keep them on your list somewhere. But if they become so toxic that they start rubbing off on you, then it's like when you learn life-saving in swimming. They teach you first thing to make sure the person doesn't drown you. Did you learn life-saving? And then when you swim up to them, you have to, it's almost the way you get them in a chokehold from behind so they don't scratch and bite and pull you down into the water. You have to make sure that you don't get drowned. So the combination of those things. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, let's move on. Will you have a point? Yes, please, Mahendra, go ahead. Always welcome.
One thing I always notice in this purport when I read it, actually two things that Prabhupada, how practical he explains what is exactly the bija, the seed. Nothing mystical. It's the method by which the spiritual master trains the disciple to execute perfectly devotional service. So it's a method, you get it, you apply it by watering, and you have the result if you're consistent and sincere. And the other thing is that about the mad elephant, the Vaishnava Parada, it's not just the sadhu ninda, but it's a combination, according to his explanation, the combination of the first these two, the sadhu ninda and the guru avagya. He actually says this is the mad elephant is guru avagya by not following the instruction, especially regular hearing, chanting, thinking. Once you become mature and you don't need to do it anymore, and then you disobey in this way, and then you commit this aparada, which we usually consider, mad elephant to be just criticism of Vaishnava sadhu ninda, but here specifically Prabhupada mentions that not following this most important instruction, not following the method, is also considered part of the mad elephant, and then the consequence will be that your bhakti lata will be broken.
And while you were saying that, I was thinking of anecdotal evidence, the way Prabhupada dealt with people, and there were plenty who didn't follow. My observation is that if they were fallen, but somewhat remorseful for it, Prabhupada just encouraged them and somehow tried to keep them engaged. There are cases where people were belligerent to Prabhupada and thought they had a better way. That's a different kind of guru avagya, as some people fall down because of sensual weakness. And Prabhupada didn't consider that a big deal. He just kept them engaged, and he asked everybody else to do the same as much as possible. But then when people became belligerent or philosophically deviant and wanted to propagate that, then Prabhupada made very strict, and he was strong about, I would say, he was very strong about rejecting them and separating them. Example, Nitai who is one of the Sanskritists who started thinking that he knew better than Prabhupada. He actually developed that mentality. And then he asked Prabhupada for a blessing to find another spiritual master. And you can tell afterwards there's some recordings of Prabhupada speaking about that he was disgusted with the person and had cut off his tie. That's really... And then there were other cases with people. He cut him off, the four sannyasi thing where they said Prabhupada was God. He did cut him off, but it was a little perfunctory because they came right back again. Because they were remorseful and they were innocent, they just became affected. But there were other people, I'm trying to remember the exact examples, but there are some people that became philosophically deviant, and you can hear them challenging Prabhupada belligerently, and Prabhupada had enough of it, and he just cut him off. So both things are there. Different kinds of deviation. One is sensual, and the other one has to do with a pollution of the heart to the point where one becomes belligerent against the guru. I'll read a couple more. The gardener must defend the creeper by fencing it all around so that the powerful elephant of offenses may not enter. While the bhakti lata creeper is growing, the devotee must protect it by fencing it all around. The neophyte devotee must be protected by being surrounded by pure devotees. In this way, he will not give the maddened elephant a chance to uproot the bhakti lata creeper. When one associates with non-devotees, the maddened elephant is set loose. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Asasanga tyag e Vaishnava achar. The first business of a Vaishnava is to give up this company of non-devotees. A so-called mature devotee, however, commits a great offense by giving up the company of pure devotees. The human being is a social animal, and if one gives up the society of pure devotees, one must associate with non-devotees, asatsanga. By contacting non-devotees and engaging in non-devotional activities, a so-called mature devotee will fall victim to the mad elephant offense. Whatever growth has taken place is quickly uprooted by such an offense. One should therefore be very careful to defend the creeper by fencing it in, that is, by following the regulative principles and associating with pure devotees. Even if one thinks that there are many pseudo-devotees or non-devotees in the Krishna Consciousness Society, still one should stick to the society. If one thinks the society's members are not pure devotees, one can keep direct company with the spiritual master. And if there is any doubt, one should consult the spiritual master. However, unless one follows the spiritual master's instructions concerning the regulative principles, and chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord, one cannot become a pure devotee. By one's mental concoctions, one falls down. By associating with non-devotees, one breaks the regulative principles and is thereby lost. In the Upadeshamrita 2 of Srila Rupa Goswami, it is said, Atyahara priyashascha prajalpunyamagraha janashangascha lalyam cha shadbir bhaktir vinashiti. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. Eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. Or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements. Sometimes unwanted creepers, such as the creepers of desire for material enjoyment and liberation from the material world, grow along with the creeper of devotional service. The varieties of such unwanted creepers are unlimited. Some unnecessary creepers growing with the bhakti creeper are the creepers of behavior unacceptable for those trying to attain perfection, diplomatic behavior, animal killing, mundane profiteering, mundane adoration, and mundane importance. All these are unwanted creepers. Purport: there is a certain pattern of behavior prescribed for those actually trying to become perfect. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we advise our students not to eat meat, not to gamble, not to engage in illicit sex, and not to indulge in intoxication. People who indulge in these activities can never become perfect. Therefore, these regulative principles are for those interested in becoming perfect and going back to Godhead. Kutinati, or diplomatic behavior, cannot satisfy the Atma, the soul. It cannot even satisfy the body or the mind. The culprit mind is always suspicious. Therefore, our dealings should always be straightforward and approved by Vedic authorities. If we treat people diplomatically or duplicitously, our spiritual advancement is obstructed. Jiva himsana refers to the killing of animals or to envy of other living entities. The killing of poor animals is undoubtedly due to envy of those animals. The human form is meant for the understanding of Krishna consciousness, atato brahma jignasa, for inquiring about the Supreme Brahman. In the human form, everyone has a chance to understand the Supreme Brahman. The so-called leaders of human society do not know the real aim of human life and are therefore busy with economic development. This is misleading. Every state and every society is busy trying to improve the quality of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This human form of life is meant for more than these four animal principles. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are problems found in the animal kingdom, and the animals have solved their problems without difficulty. Why should human society be so busy trying to solve these problems? The difficulty is that people are not educated to understand this simple philosophy. They think that advancement of civilization means increasing sense gratification. There are many religious propagandists who do not know how the ultimate problems of life can be solved. And they also try to educate people in the form of sense gratification. This is also jiva himsana. Real knowledge is not given, and religionists mislead the general populace. As far as material profits are concerned, one should know that whatever material profit one has must be abandoned at the time of death. Unfortunately, people do not know that there is life after death. Therefore, mundane people waste their time amassing material profit, which has to be left behind at the time of death. Such profit has no eternal benefit. Similarly, adoration by mundane people is valueless because after death one has to accept another body. Material adoration and titles are decorations that cannot be carried over to the next body. In the next life, everything is forgotten. All these obstructions have been described in this verse as unwanted creepers. They simply present obstacles for the real creeper, the bhakti lata. One should be very careful to avoid all these unwanted things. Sometimes these unwanted creepers look exactly like the bhakti lata creeper. They appear to be one and the same size and the same species when they are packed together with the bhakti lata creeper. But in spite of this, the creepers are called upashaka. A pure devotee can distinguish between the bhakti lata creeper and a mundane creeper, and he is very alert to distinguish them and keep them separate. If one does not distinguish between the bhakti lata creeper and the other creepers, the sprinkling of water is misused because the other creepers are nourished, while the bhakti lata creeper is curtailed. If one chants the Hare Krishna mantra while committing offenses, these unwanted creepers will grow. One should not take advantage of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra for some material profit. As mentioned in verse 159, Nishidachara kuti nati jiva himsana labha pucha pratishtadi jata upashaka gana. The unwanted creepers have been described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He states that if one hears and chants without trying to give up offenses, one becomes materially attached to sense gratification. One may also desire freedom from material bondage like the Mayavadis. Or one may become attached to the yoga siddhis and desire wonderful yogic powers. If one is attached to wonderful material activities, one is called siddhi lobi, greedy for material perfection. One may also be victimized by diplomatic or crooked behavior, or one may associate with women for illicit sex. One may make a show of devotional service like the Prakrita Sahajas, or one may try to support his philosophy by joining some caste or identifying himself with a certain dynasty, claiming a monopoly on spiritual advancement. Thus, with the support of family tradition, one may become a pseudo-guru, or so-called spiritual master. One may become attached to the four sinful activities, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating, or one may consider a Vaishnava to belong to a mundane caste or creed. One may think this is a Hindu Vaishnava and this is a European Vaishnava. European Vaishnavas are not allowed to enter temples, the temples. In other words, one may consider Vaishnavas in terms of birth, thinking one a Brahmin Vaishnava and another a Shudra Vaishnava, another a Mlecha Vaishnava, and so on. One may also try to carry out a professional business by means of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra or reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Or one may try the Hare Krishna mantra, or one may try to increase his monetary strength by illegal means. Also, one may become a cheap Vaishnava by trying to chant in a secluded place for material adoration. Or one may desire mundane reputation by making compromises with non-devotees concerning one's philosophy or spiritual life. Or one may become a supporter of a hereditary caste system. All these are pitfalls of personal sense gratification. Just to cheat some innocent people, one makes a show of advanced spiritual life and becomes known as a sadhu, mahatma, or religious person. All this means that the so-called devotee has become victimized by all these unwanted creepers, and that the real creeper, the Bhakti Lata, has been stunted. As soon as an intelligent devotee sees an unwanted creeper growing beside the original creeper, he must cut it down instantly. Then the real creeper, the Bhakti Lata, grows nicely, returns home back to Godhead, and seeks shelter unto the lotus feet of Krishna. Purport: if one is misled by unwanted creepers and is victimized, he cannot make progress back to Godhead. Rather, he remains within the material world and engages in activities having nothing to do with pure devotional service. Such a person may be elevated to the higher planetary systems, but because he remains within the material world, he is subjected to the threefold material miseries. When the fruit of devotional service becomes ripe and falls down, the gardener tastes the fruit and thus takes advantage of the creeper and reaches the desired tree of the lotus feet of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. There the devotee serves the lotus feet of the Lord, which are compared to a wish-fulfilling tree. With great bliss he tastes the juice of the fruit of love of God and becomes eternally happy. The word tahan indicates that in the spiritual world one can taste the juice of the fruit of devotional service and thus become blissful. To taste the fruit of devotional service in Goloka Vrindavan is the highest perfection of life, and in the presence of such perfection, the four material perfections, religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, are very insignificant achievements. Purport: the highest achievement attained by the Gyanis or impersonalists is becoming one with the Supreme, generally known as moksha, liberation. The highest achievements of the yogis are the 8 material perfections, such as anima, lagima, and prapti. Yet these are nothing compared to the eternal bliss of the devotee who returns back to Godhead and tastes the fruit of devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. The material perfections, even up to the point of liberation, are very insignificant in comparison. Therefore, the pure devotee is never interested in such things. His only interest is in perfecting his devotional service to the Lord. The pleasure of the impersonalist, monist philosophers is condemned in the following verse, which is also found in Srila Rupa Goswami's Lalita Madhava. Chinta Chaitanya Prabhu, you had a point?
I'm just 1 second, just looking. Yeah, I had a professor in the university who would say that I'll throw some light on something and you can generate some heat on that, So the point that I made in the first session, I guess, that in the Bhaktivinoda Thakur's line, we accept the Chaitanya Charitamrita as our primary authority on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when I made that point, there was a devotee scholar who was hearing the readings, and he wrote different things to me about what I had commented. And I was wondering, how do I respond? Or I was wrapping my head around it, trying to wrap my head around it. But today, I think in the reading session, finally I got it, where it is mentioned that the predecessor acharyas are represented by the spiritual master. That particular phrase, represented, was what I was really looking for, because just to give the reference, actually in this Dashamula Tattva, in the beginning, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes the following. Some time ago, I happened to see one new publication called Sri Chaitanya Matha Bodhini. The authors had vowed to give the pure teachings of Sri Chaitanya to the world. The vow is not bad, but the system they propose to gather Sri Chaitanya's teachings is very dangerous. The authors thought that they could extract the Lord's teachings from the Sanskrit works of the Goswamis. They forgot that the essence of the Goswamis' works is contained in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is sufficient to take this work in order to present the teachings of Sri Chaitanya to the world. There is no one as learned as Kaviraj Goswami today. Anyone who thinks that he can extract the essence from the Sanskrit works of the Goswamis better than Kaviraj Goswami is certainly worthless and foolish. I have firm conviction that by presenting to the world clearly the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, nothing else need to be known. However, many topics in Kaviraj's work are described in a cryptic way. In those places, it is best to consult the Sandarbhas, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and other works of the Goswamis in order to clarify matters. So this is the exact reference from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's work. But then after quoting this, the conclusion that the devotee came up with was, after reading this passage, it still seems that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur considers the Sandarbhas, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, etc. as the ultimate authority for himself and his followers, since he says one must consult them to clearly understand many topics which are only presented in a cryptic way. Then he says one cannot refer to an inferior authority to clarify the teachings of a superior authority. Does that make sense? So I think the problem here is that this concept of inferior authority and superior authority, Prabhupada never refers to such a concept anywhere. Rather, he only says the Acharya and his predecessors. So when we look at the Acharya and his predecessors, we don't look at somebody as inferior authority and somebody as superior authority. Of course, Prabhupada may consider somebody as his superior authority, but as his followers, we don't consider like Prabhupada is an inferior authority and the previous acharyas are superior authorities. And definitely what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying is that nothing else needs to be known if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But things which are cryptic, one can refer to the previous Acharya's works for more clarification. It's not that Kaviraj Goswami's work is not final. This doesn't contradict that actually. And just the fact that this statement that inferior authority, superior authority, I would say the later authority clarifies the teachings of the previous authorities. For example, in the Brahma Samhita commentary on the Ananda Chinmaya verse, where for centuries there was this whole debate in Gaudiya Vaishnavism that Jiva Goswami said that Lord Krishna was married, and later on Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur came and he said that Lord Krishna was not married. So he can't be both married and not unmarried, at least for the common human mind. So what the scholars started saying was that Jiva Goswami wrote for his time, for a particular audience, who could not, because of cultural sensitivities of the time, therefore Jiva Goswami wrote something like that. So the actual thing is represented by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But it was actually Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who came and clarified what this means. He explained to us how both of them are simultaneously true by saying that in the spiritual world, these gopis do not have factual husbands, but it is their constitutional nature that they think that they are the wives of someone else. Whereas in this material world, in the Vrindavan where we are currently, manifestation of Vrindavan from the spiritual world, here the external husbands manifest just to bewilder the conditioned souls. So here you have a later Acharya clarifying the teachings of the previous Acharyas, which is usually our parampara system, not usually, that is our parampara system, that the representative Acharya clarifies the teachings of the previous Acharyas. But if the representative Acharya has not said something cryptic, that we may understand the cryptic nature of the message by referring to the previous Acharyas. But it's not that the highest authorities for us are the previous Acharyas. It is our representative Acharya who is our highest authority. I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you. It was a well-developed thought and response to whatever the person wrote to you. It's an important point, how to accept authority, how to verify certain aspects of Shastra and what mood and who to take as the authority is vital. Thank you very much, everyone. To be continued at 4 o'clock, right after the lunch. And tomorrow's slightly different schedule because I have to leave in the morning time to give class in Vrindavan, and then I have to attend a meeting of Indian leaders for an hour or so, meaning hope to be back by lunch tomorrow. Then we'll continue. And then the day after, which is the 14th, means in the morning we're going to have some fireworks. We have fire ceremony outside, an initiation that will hopefully start around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then we'll work that out exactly and finish in time for breakfast. Then we'll continue in the afternoon or in the morning with our regular after breakfast schedule, and then the normal afternoon schedule. Is that clear?
Yes.
It's pretty simple. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Radhesham, please bless everybody who joined this session today, either in person or online, that they may take all the lessons to heart and have the strength to follow them. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. everyone agrees with this prayer, and why wouldn't they? In whole or in part, please say Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol, Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Panchakalptarishcha Kripasindhaveva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.